is Robert Paulson. If you don't get that reference, we can't be friends. Corny marriage joke to start us off. This couple goes in to open a joint account, like at a bank or investment firm, and they sit down, and the guy goes, "Good, we're all ready to go. All I need is your marriage license I told y'all to bring, and we can make this a joint account." And the husband looks at the wife and goes, "Well, did you bring the marriage license?" She goes, "What do you mean? You didn't tell me to bring the marriage license." And he goes, "I told you the one thing I asked for was for you to bring the marriage license." She goes, "No, you did not. I mean, why do I get blamed for everything?" He's like, "Really? So I set this whole meeting up, and I asked you to do one thing," and the guy stops and goes, "Never mind, I believe you're married." Yeah. So our point this weekend is that if you're in a marriage and you struggle, then welcome to the club, the Struggling Humans Club. Let me tell you a little about our organization. For one thing, if you're not a member of our club, you're a member of another club, the Liars Club, all right? As we said, just like the gospel, marriage has to begin here with our recognition of our need for mercy and growth, and we've looked at the 4 abilities we need to have to do that. We've looked at 2 of the biggest pieces. We're going to look at 2 of the biggest pieces this morning. We just looked at intimacy. So lastly, we're going to look at basically what is mutuality. In other words, closeness is great, but how do we both matter? So in a sense, this is the second I. How do I be me and you be you, and we work that out? Mutuality. All right? So where I want to go lastly here this morning is to talk about the issue of conflict and fighting. In other words, how do we both exist? How do you deal with the horrible nightmare of being married to someone who is not you? Okay? Because if I'm me and you're you, we're going to have conflict. Basically, point 1, conflict isn't bad. Okay, conflict itself basically just happens when you have 2 people in a relationship, both of whom have brains, okay? Billion-dollar government grants have shown that relationships are always more difficult with 2 people in them, okay? That's your tax dollars at work, all right? Those couples who say, "Oh, we never fight." I'm like, yuck. What's the fun of that? One of you is asleep, or you're complying, or you're just both too nice. Something's getting watered down. 2 alive people are going to have conflict, and we can resolve that, and it actually creates better intimacy. Remember what the Seraph says to Neo, and I think it's the second Matrix. He says, "How can you really know someone until you fight them?" All right? So conflict and disagreement is not a problem. That's not the real problem area. That's not the plot twist. The real problem is more this. So you have a conflict, you have some disagreement, there's some glitch thrown into your relationship. You feel like your spouse is not getting you. You feel like that they're not letting you matter. That you walk in and they've left their clothes on the floor again. You know those things. Norma cleans up behind me. I mean, right behind me. Okay? Like, I like to cook, and I'll like cut an onion, and I'll put the knife down to reach for another onion, and I'll come back, and she'll clean the knife off and have it in the block. I'm like, "Where'd my knife go?" You know, I tease her if I get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, I come back, she's made up my side of the bed. I'm like, "Come on." Or maybe you need them relationally or need them sexually, and they're blowing you off, or they're telling you how to drive, which we established last night was the marriage killer, you know. Basic conflict stuff. But instead of working through the problem or actually thinking about what you need or asking for it in an adult way, instead you get an itchy trigger finger and you jab and you poke and you get that fed up feeling, and you start saying stuff like, "You know what? I'm really sick of blah, blah, blah." Or, "You know, you really are exactly like my dad, aren't you?" Right? Or the room just gets icy. You know, like when the Harry Potter Dementors come around, it's like, and you can feel it's like, oh, everything in the room just changed. You know that? And your hurt turns to anger, or your fear turns to anger. That's what anger is, by the way. Anger is a secondary feeling that we used as a defense against feeling scared or feeling ashamed or feeling powerless. So we hide behind anger. And we hurt them and we attack them. And what was once a conflict is now a fight. So point 1, conflict, good. Point 2, fight, not good. Okay? Starting with the basics here. And fights are what I want us to focus on, because if a conflict can stay a conflict, two people with a problem, we can solve that, man. No big. All right? But once it becomes a fight, you ain't trying to solve anything anymore, Cinderella. All right? You're just hurt and angry and trying to win, and they're trying to hurt you back. And again, remember Mr. Old Problem who's sitting over here all by himself and nobody's paying attention to him because you're too busy fighting to actually solve the problem. So this morning I want to deconstruct fighting. And it's by definition this complex, flowing sort of dance full of all this emotional reactivity and loadedness. And I want to sort of break it apart and kind of slow it down like the Matrix and kind of look at it like, how does this work? And try to give us some frontal lobe, some left brain tools for this emotionally reactive process that fights are, okay? And I want to get real practical with that with you. This is the most practical of the talks. I want you to take notes, and these notes I think can help you today handle these kind of situations better, something you can take with you to do differently. The only downside of practical is it's going to sound a little oversimplified at first, and you're going to go, yeah, but what about so-and-so? And I want you to say that in Q&A, because then you can help me put meat on the bones, okay? So, it's going to be some pointers, but not a miracle cure. This is not raise up your spouse in the way that they could go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it, okay? That's not what we're shooting for here, okay? Now, again, as related to some of the stuff we talked about last night, I'm assuming in this talk that you are both somewhat repentant. Okay? I mean, if you're both here on a Saturday morning, you're more repentant than me. I'm going to assume that you both are kind of open to willing to work on the problem. The tools I'm going to give you today assume that you are to some degree repentant. And we'll touch some on dealing with that unrepentant person, like that question Barney asked last night for me to develop that more. We can talk more about that too. I'll touch on it some, but mostly I'm going to assume that you're here to try to figure out how to, hey, Doc, we keep fighting. What do we do? All right? So, what are we going to talk about? Number one, what do we do in a fight once you know you're having one? How do we defuse the bomb? Once you've Thelma and Louised off the cliff, and, how do we put Humpty back together again? All right? Well, that's mixing metaphors, isn't it? Number two, how do we see and understand what's going on in the fight? You will never get out of a fight, and you will never stop having fights until you develop some frontal lobe categories to think about what's going on, because fights take place back in your primitive amygdala reptile brain, okay? And we're going to need to go frontal lobe on this. Furthermore, we're going to have to address the hurt that gets created in a fight. When folks fight, they hurt one another, and we've got to address that or else, all right? And finally, how do we go back and actually resolve the original problem that started this whole thing in the first place, okay? And do so in a way that both of us matter, which is key. Mutuality, which is as important as intimacy, okay? So number one, what do we do when the fight bomb hits? When you realize you're fighting, when you realize it's escalated, when you're saying the stuff you've kind of always wanted to say, first thing to do is go to timeout. Grown-up timeout. All right? You put your kids in timeout. Put yourself in timeout. Okay? You know how to do this already. That means somebody says, the moment you start to feel it getting nasty, somebody says, whoa, 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 I think we need to break. Whoa, 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 whoa. I feel like I'm really about to say some stuff I'm going to regret. Can we take a time out? Well, I feel like we're losing control here, and this is going nowhere and being hurtful. We need to stop. Or you can set time out on someone else. You know what? That felt really hurtful. I think I need to take a little break. Okay? In other words, once you feel that jolt, once you feel that anger rise, that's your tell. When you feel it, you can feel the adrenaline. When you say stuff like, I can't believe, that sort of thing. Or one in my office the other day, her husband said something she didn't like, and she just did this. She went. And I'm like, dude, run, go. It was scary. Slow, so slow. Anyway, once things get ugly, once they start to turn to custard, the first thing to do is not do what comes naturally, okay? Don't go with your reflexes. See, the reason that is because when we're triggered in a conflict, fight, hostility, whatever, what happens in our brains is we get triggered back here in that early caveman brain, that amygdala, that hypothalamus, where our options are basically fight, flight, or freeze. All right? Pretty primitive solutions. In other words, fight T-Rex or run from him. That's kind of the level of our sophistication there. Or freeze still because their vision is motion activated. Didn't we learn that in the movies? Anyway, in other words, we withdraw, we criticize, we nag, we go into that reptile approach. We get silent, we yell and scream, we become roommates. Tools of the trade for fighting, right? In order to see which of us is going to win, which of us is going to be right, which of us is going to be the good guy. Sound familiar? Got a regular crowd here? Okay, yeah. In other words, we do the same thing that we do with a Coke machine when it doesn't give us what we want. Think about it. What's supposed to happen? You put money in a Coke machine and what? Get a Coke. Good. I like to ask some questions, sort of self-esteem builders. Good, y'all. All right, so what do you do in a Coke machine? You put money in it and nothing comes out. You start banging on it, and flicking the change return and all this. In other words, you become more aggressive, and that's what a fight is with your spouse. I call it the Coke machine phenomenon. And we call that a fight, and that's a lot of fun till 1:30 in the morning. But think about it strategically. There are a few downsides to a fight, problems that timeout is going to help us with. Let's talk about that a second. Number one, timeout stops the hurt and the hurtfulness. It stops the mean fest. In other words, in a fight, we say things we don't mean. We strike out at one another. When we're triggered in that caveman reptile brain, it's law of the jungle. It's eat what you kill. It's win at all costs, right? And that part of us is destructive and needs to be stopped. So time out is like setting limits on a child, the child part of us. Those 6-year-olds, remember them from last night? That's what we're being in a fight, is we're becoming those 2 6-year-olds, and we've got to have a limit set on them, okay? So one of the things timeout does is just say, you know what, we've shifted into that beat each other up 6-year-old mode, and we both need to go to timeout. It needs to stop. This is one of the most underused things that I see in my office. People say, we fought for 4 hours. And I'm like, the moment you guys switched into reptile brain, there was nothing good ever going to happen. There has to be a timeout there. It's so incredibly underused because what we do is we just hammer away at each other and we dig deeper scars. The moment it starts to get ugly, we need to call that timeout, all right? So while we're here, by the way, let me answer that age-old question. Is what your spouse says when they're really angry how they really feel? You're having a fight and they're like, well, I never wanted kids anyway. And you're like, whoa. Is that what they really feel? No, it's not. That primitive, emotionally driven child part of us thinks like a child. It's real absolute and extreme and outlandish. That's why they need timeouts, okay? So we got to engage those children and put them in timeout. Basic principle, marriage is like fireworks. Do not attempt without adult supervision. Okay? So we got to get the adults, we got to get some grown-ups in there. And we need a timeout to do that. So the first reason we use timeout is because people get hurt by cavemen and cave girls, and we've got to stop that from happening, all right? Now, second reason is that timeout's going to help stop the win-lose. Let me put it this way. The goal of fighting, as opposed to conflict, the goal of conflict is to us both matter. But the goal of fighting is wrong. Okay? Think about it. The goal of conflict is how do I matter? How do you matter? How do we work that out? What's the goal of a fight? The goal is to win, right? To be the right person. Now, I don't want to be insensitive or anything, But what kind of goal is that? My goal is to win. My goal is for you to lose. Best case scenario, think about it. You win, which means that you're married to a loser. And now the loser hates your guts. And they're going to come back and win next time. Think happy thoughts, okay? This is so interesting to me. Another one, remember I told you that one of the defaults that I see in every marriage in my office is they go to blame. You know, the blame marriage thing. And I said there was another one. This is the other one. Every couple I ever see in my marriage defaults to a win-lose. They default to which one of us is going to win, which one of us is going to be right. Think about it. You have these disagreements. What do you say? We don't have enough money to do that. Well, you had enough money to go on that golf trip. Do you hear it? We're going to play the debate game to see which of us is going to win, okay? I had a story right on the tip of my tongue. Oh, yeah. Norm and I were fussing about money the other day, and I was complaining about how much she orders Amazon. You know, there's always Amazon boxes on the front steps. And she got one, poor girl. She got one the other day that was just addressed to Norma. I'm like, this is where we are now. It's like, they're like, does this go to Norma too? And they're like, yeah, Norma's pile is out back, yeah. She's backed the Norma truck up. This is Norma's too, right? Yep. Beep, beep, beep. Anyway, so basically we fight, we power struggle. Number one thing I see in marriages is they come in with a win-lose. We'll address that in a minute. Every marriage that struggles does this, okay? Now, think in reality, though. How many win-lose relationships in reality work? I mean, think about it. If you go to Starbucks and they're charging $19.50 for a cappuccino, that's a big win for them. Lose for you, you're going to go somewhere else, right? Or if you start stealing those neat little mugs they have on those shelves, you know, that's a win for you, lose for them. That probably won't work very long either. Okay, win-lose relationships don't work, but all of us default to them in our marriages, and I want you to have that category. We're doing that thing of who's going to be right, who's going to win, all right? The playground principle is this. Hitting the kid who has the ball might get you the ball, but it's not going to get you anybody to throw it with, okay? So we got to time out this headbanger ball. Even if you don't know what to do good, just stop doing the bad, all right? None of your solutions that you use when you're fighting are helpful. This is so underused, okay? By the way, timeout is not, I'm out of here, time out, jerk face. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. Timeout is not silent treatment. It's like, okay, well, fine. Yeah. I'm in timeout for the next 3 days. One woman told me after a conference, she said, I'm never using timeout. It just gave him a chance to escape. So you got to time in, okay? And talk about this ahead of time. This is one of your jobs as you're thinking about timeout is talk about this ahead of time. Timeouts don't need to last more than maybe 30 minutes, okay? Just enough to let that adrenaline sort of simmer down and you get your frontal lobes back. But you need to take the time and go ahead and agree. We're going to take time. People always go, yeah, but what if your spouse never wants to time in? We can talk about that. That's some of the meat on the bones we can do. But have a category for timing in. I just want you to stop the madness, okay? And people go, well, we can't delay it. You know, doesn't Paul tell us to not let the sun go down on our anger? He's talking metaphorically, guys. This isn't like in the cowboy movies, like, you got till sundown to work this out. That's not what he's saying, okay? He's saying keep it on your desktop. Keep it fresh. Stay with it till you resolve it, all right? Now, you can call timeout on yourself. This is the fourth I from last night, remember? You can say, I think I need a moment. Inside I'm going, I want to rip your head off. And I'm thinking that's probably not the best direction to go. But I don't know what to say that's nice. I remember I told Norma, I'm like, okay, I know I'm about to say like bad things and ugly things, but I don't know what to say that's nice. So can we just time out? And she goes, yeah, okay, let's do that. And maybe you can call like some of your nice friends and ask them what they would say. And like, anyway. So even if you don't know what to do good, just don't do the bad, okay? Golf, not tennis. So a church asked me to do a conference on adolescence. It's on the podcast, actually. And I'm like, you mean a parenting conference? They said, no, an adolescence conference. Now, those of you who have adolescents know that if dealing with little kids is Newtonian physics, dealing with adolescents is quantum mechanics, okay? It's a hard thing to do, and it was a hard conference to write, and I was really struggling with it, and I finally figured it out. And I was working in my man cave, and I came tumbling down the stairs, and I said, Norma, I got it. I figured it out. I know how to do this adolescence conference. Boom. And she goes, oh, okay, good. And kind of wanders off. 6-year-old me is like, thank you for your encouragement. I feel so supported by my wife. All right, but I did have the sense to say, don't say that. Golf, not tennis. Fourth eye. Time out. You don't know what to say good, bad, good, so don't say the bad. And so I went back to my man cave. I timed myself out. Whatever happens right now is I don't need to say what I'm thinking. That's time out, right? So I had to do a little work. What did that hook me? What does that mean? Is there a question I need to ask? What am I needing here? What am I needing there? What question did I need to ask Norma? Since it's obvious she doesn't care. It's obvious, right? You all see it. I went back downstairs and I said, can I ask you a question? And she said, yeah. I said, do you care that I figured out how to do my conference? And she said, oh my gosh, yes. I know you've been working so hard on that. I said, well, you were really nonplussed when I talked to you about it, like you didn't care. Like, you do care? And she said, oh, I just gotten off a difficult conversation with my mom. And I'm like, wait, everything's not about me? Like, what? There are other factors in your life besides me? I'm really triggered. No. Now, let me tell you something. That's a great story, and that's one of my success stories. But if you're like me, let me get real honest. Timing out yourself, you're not going to want to go to timeout if you're anything like me. And I'll tell you why. Number one, well, I think there is only one number, and it's number one. Here's the reason you don't want to go to timeout. Because it feels good to be a jerk. I mean, tell me I'm not the only one. I mean, in that moment when I'm mad, I kind of want to be mean. I kind of want to make my point with my finger in her face. I kind of want to not let her off the hook, you know? So let me tell you something that you're going to experience if you go to timeout when you're really mad, when you're really amped up. If you set limits on how much you want to be mean, it's going to feel bad. You see, it feels good to be mean when we're angry. And psychologically, here's the reason. And one of the reasons it's hard to forgive, too, fits in the same category. But one of the reasons that being angry at someone and holding a grudge and even lashing out at them feels good is because it's sort of like, imagine I have like 10 pennies worth of shame and meanness and anger and cruelty and junk inside of me. If I can do that to you, it's like I take like 8 of those pennies and dump them on you. And so now I only have 2 pennies left. I feel a lot better. Temporarily. I've got the freaking Denver Mint inside of me printing out new pennies all the time, okay? More reason why I said last night, we don't just let go of it. We don't just share our, you got to get your feelings out. That was the phrase. Because we're making new ones all the time. You got to resolve them. But this is a phenomenon I see all the time. I have spouses say, my husband will rage at me, and then it's afterwards, he's like all sweet and cuddly and warm and nice. And I'm like, yeah, he's regurgitated everything on you, and now he feels better. You know how like when your kids have stomach virus and they finally throw up, now they're running around the house like they're real happy? Same kind of thing, all right? So, that's one of the reasons we need to set limits on bullies and unrepentance. And it's one of the reasons we need to set limits on ourselves and the part of me that's a bully, the part of me that is hurtful. I need to go to timeout. So time out yourself. Now, secondly, you can time out your spouse. This is relevant to that unrepentant spouse we talked about last night. They come in the house going, what are you thinking parking like that? All right? Now, the oppressed spouses are going to go, well, I thought maybe you wanted to get the garbage out later. And what you've just done, like I said last night, is give them tacit permission to talk to you like that. Because see, I'll respond. Okay? They need a limit. They need you to say, I don't think I want to have a conversation that starts like that. Can we do a do-over? Now, you've just essentially put them in timeout. And when they say, I'm sick of you using all your psychobabble on me, you say, you know what? I'm really not at all willing to have a relationship, an interaction in which you're starting to really call names and point fingers. But if you want to get curious about how both of us relate in ways that can feel yucky, I'm ready for that. Sign me up. See, I'm not going to defending. I'm not attacking back. I'm setting a limit. A good limit's always a rule about me. I'm not willing to have this conversation. A limit's not, you quit drinking. A limit is, I don't interact with inebriated people. Good limit's a rule for me. That's why it's not control. It's a limit. I don't want to have a conversation with you if you're going to do that. I was being a jerk to Norma one evening, and we were having a conflict, and I said something ugly. And she stopped, and she said, did you mean that to be mean? And I said, what? She said, we're having a conflict. I mean, it was animated and all that, but it felt like that was just kind of a knife, and you were just wanting to be mean. Is that what you were doing? I stopped, and I thought, yeah, I was. She goes, well, I really would rather not interact if you're going to be mean. We can talk tomorrow. See what she did to me? She didn't say, oh my gosh, you're such a jerk. She didn't go, oh, I'm so scared of you because you're mean. She was powerful and loving and in a Christ-like way. This is what I mean. Setting limits on difficult people. I was the difficult person. Did you mean that to be mean? Made me go into my frontal lobes and ask a question. Did I? I actually did. And she set a limit on me, and I had to grow up. That's what we're talking about here, okay? That's a good time out on someone being hurtful. That's not only a limit to protect us, but is the only thing that will help them grow. The only thing that would help me grow in that instance with Norma is somebody to set a limit on me. That's the healing tool, the medicine for an unrepentant person, okay? That's going to so train us to develop that fourth eye. All right, and I say this again, so underused. I'll have people come to my office and they're like, you don't believe it. She just yelled at me for like 4 hours. She language. And when they do that, I always look at their feet. And they're like, what? I'm like, I was making sure you had feet. I wonder why you stood there for 4 hours. You got car keys? You got a door? Really? Setting limits, I'm not willing to talk to you if, protects you and helps them grow. Again, I feel like this is so lost in Christianity nowadays. We're so into like submit better or turn the other cheek or whatever, and we misinterpret those passages and we miss out on the stronger parts of, the more powerful parts of godliness. I love Psalm 18 where he says, to the pure I am pure, and to the blameless I am blameless, and to the wicked I am shrewd. He calls us to Christ-likeness. I'm calling you to shrewdness. Number 3, third reason that timeout's important is it's going to give us a chance to think. Hello, fourth eye, we meet again. Okay? In other words, the only thing that's going to work you out of a fight, the only thing that's going to solve a conflict is for us to think and move from that amygdala and hypothalamus up here to some frontal lobes. I'm talking executive functioning, people, okay? And it takes, 5, 20, 30 minutes for that adrenaline rush to shut down, but timeout's going to give us that time. We need to think, why is this hooking me? What am I needing? What is going on? Are we going to become a couple who is about, let's figure out what's going on, or are we going to be a couple who's just about swinging away? In other words, I want to start thinking, how do we solve this problem? Timeout's going to give us a chance to do that. Bottom line, we're smart up here, we're dumb back here. Okay? You know when Obi-Wan says, Luke, trust your feelings, right? Obi-Wan was wrong. Okay? I'm sorry, Master Obi, but, trust your feelings? Are you kidding me? See, that's why he had to live alone as a hermit on Tatooine, because no man can maintain a relationship with a woman thinking like that. I mean, it just doesn't work. So, anyway, So time out. Hit the kill switch, way underused. Now, let's use those frontal lobes that timeout has bought us. What's all that thinking going to give us? Step number 2 is we're going to go bird's eye. As I told you earlier, secret of the universe, marriage problems aren't linear. They aren't cause and effect. They are cyclical, and they create that dance. And one of the most powerful things you can do in a marriage is learn your dance. A huge way to be able to intervene with a fight, to be able to stop having it in the future, is to time out, back up, back away, turn around, and look at yourself. That's why I call it bird's eye or fly on the wall, and start going, what are we doing? What are we needing? We're doing that thing again, Sherlock. What's up with that? I always do A, and that makes you do B. It makes me do A worse. Hey, we're doing it again, okay? That's called going bird's eye, that objectivity on your fight. Once you've gone to time out and get some frontal lobes, you can start actually thinking about this dynamic. One of the values of marriage therapy or marriage conferences, even if your therapist is a moron, is that it helps to have somebody outside your system look back at it. Somebody could help you get that objectivity, all right? When our kids were little, Norm and I used to have what we came to call the Whose Day is Worse War. And it went something like this. I'd stumble in from work with my computer case and my coat, jacket, kind of slumped, having the I've had a bad day posture, okay? And I would say something like, hey, as if to say, wow, don't you appreciate how hard I've been working all day, taking care of our family and providing for us? Now, the problem is the source of my adoration is slumped over the stove, blankly cooking something I probably don't want for dinner. And her response is, hey, can you set the table? As if to say, welcome back from your 8-hour vacation, big boy. You know, it's time to go to work now, okay? Now, I don't know about her, but I've been helping people all day, okay? All she's been doing is driving around in a minivan. I mean, come on, you know? And I say, I'd like to sit down just for a minute, as if to say, what do you have to complain about? And she's like, oh, yeah? Well, and pretty soon our 6-year-olds are running the show, and we're having the same old fight. Now, what's the fight? Go bird's eye with me. First thing we need to do is time out. I mean, this is going nowhere, right? But number 2, let's go bird's eye. What are we doing? We're playing a game. Who's going to be appreciated as much as we deserve? As if only one of us can. You hear the win-lose? Couples always default to win-lose, all right? What bird's eye does is back up and ask 2 questions. What are we doing here? What's our dance? And what's going on with me? What am I doing here? In other words, to address this kind of dynamic, this dance, we got to do some observing. So what do Norm and I need to do? We need to time it out. We need to back up. We start to have a post-fight conversation that sounds like, I think what happens is I start getting the feeling like you don't really appreciate and care how hard I work providing for the family and all that. And I think I want to try to out-pitiful you so that you appreciate me. And she's like, yeah, and I kind of feel like you don't get all that I do here with the home and the bills and the plumbers and the pediatrician's office. And so I think we just are trying to out-pitiful each other. It's like, yeah, we are. Okay? We're doing that thing again. Do you hear the bird's eye? So bird's eye number 1 is instead of fighting the same fight for 30 years, like the Energizer Bunny, one of us backs up and kind of looks at the us and steps off the tennis court and says, what are we doing? And hey, maybe we could create some new choreography for this dance, you know? By the way, hear it when I start talking bird's eye. Do you hear the pronouns change? We, us, our. What are we doing? Think about a fight. Fight's always about you. No, you. No, you. And all of a sudden with bird's eye, we start going, what are we doing here? I call this y'allness, which some places I teach this, they don't understand what I'm talking about. Y'all do. What are y'all doing? What are y'all doing in your relationship, okay? Sometimes you have to do this later. I sometimes say every fight's 2 fights. You have the first one where you act like idiots, and you have the second one where you go back bird's eye and go, I think what happened was when you said that, it made me feel stupid. And so that made me lash out. And you have this debrief. I call it a conflict post-mortem, like an autopsy, all right? And you go fly on the wall about what y'all did. That's gold. So hedge your bets for the next time, okay? Because there will be a next time. There will be. There will be. By the way, one of the things I love, this is a little bit of a throwaway, is I love, if your spouse does something that feels really crummy to you, I love a request for something in the future rather than a complaint about something in the past. In other words, it sounds like this. Instead of going, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just stood there while your mom said that to me. Okay, what's your spouse going to do? They're going to go attack mode. They're going to go defense mode. Oh, well, I like to request something for the future. Hey, in the future, if you feel like, I'll kind of give you a sign. Your mom, she can be a little hurtful to me. Would you be willing to step in and advocate for me about that in the future? Again, I'm going bird's eye. I'm asking for something new in the future. I'm not demanding it, and I'm not attacking you for what you did in the past. Huge way to stop a conflict before it starts. Would you be willing to do this in the future? By the way, if you can't get that objective together, going bird's eye, there's your sign to have some external eyes brought on it, like we said to the question last night. Now, second bird's eye, number 2, what's going on with me? This one's gold for me. You know that feeling when things have gotten way bigger than they should? When your reaction has gotten way bigger than it should? You know, when 2 plus 2 is equaling 7. This question is, where's that other 3 coming from? Okay? Well, after I've timed out, I need to start asking myself, what's going on? Why did that trigger me up so much, man? All right? Maybe it's a way you've wounded me in the past in our relationship and we've never resolved it. Maybe it's a way in which you've been chronically hurting me. This is our same old pattern. Maybe it's developmental. Maybe it's something from my own family growing up, a childhood injury or a lacking or a wound, and I'm bringing that inner kid or that inner Godzilla into the relationship, okay, that little 6-year-old guy, all right? I call these legacy hurts or legacy needs, and they just sit in the background until, we're disagreeing about car insurance or something, and all of a sudden it's like we blow up. And our spouse is like, whoa, where'd that come from? I want you asking that too. Where'd that come from? We're like, this is a line in Anchorman. Like, well, that escalated quickly. I killed a man with a trident. So what's going on with me? This is gold. Okay, so Norma wrote a book years ago, and it was a book on Camp DeSoto. Y'all know Camp DeSoto? This is kind of North Alabama. So anyway, at one point she asked me if I would edit one of the chapters, and I was glad to help out. I was an English major in addition to psychology. Be glad to help you. So I edited her chapter, and it was hard copy. Came back in the room where she was writing it, and I'm like, I edited your chapter. And she's like, okay, thanks. She goes back to typing. Well, you know me by now. I'm like, well, you're welcome. Anyway, I feel all this stuff coming up in me again, okay? And I'm like, time out. You can't do something here. So I go back to the legendary man cave, my fortress of solitude, to get my 6-year-old under control. And I start asking questions. I figure it out. I come back downstairs. She goes, are you okay? You looked upset. Is there a problem? Do we have a problem? I said, no, we don't have a problem. This isn't about you. I realized that my reaction isn't about you. It's about like my mom or something. In other words, I was raised in the 60s, right? I was raised in the be a good boy, make us proud of you. And look, John, you did so good. In other words, the feeling I had was that Norma didn't praise me enough for what I had given her. All right? I wanted us to I wanted her to say John, this is so good. Let's go put this on the refrigerator, together. I needed some adoration, and she didn't give it to me, and so I was about to pick a fight. This is inside me. This is a legacy stuff. This is what am I doing, all right? Keller says, marriage does not so much put us in confrontation with our spouse as it puts us in confrontation with ourselves. That's what I'm talking about, all right? Now, again, if you can't do that yourself, you need external eyes. Remember, we grow in the context of relationship. So we've timed out, we've observed, we're asking, what am I doing? What are we doing? Number 3, we got to address the hurt. As I said, one of the key differences between a conflict and a fight has to do with hurt. And in fights, we hurt each other, and we gotta fix that. Now, here is sad secret of the universe number 487. Most humans have no idea how to heal hurt once we've caused it. So what we see are relationships that go on for decades, and there's hurt, and maybe it wasn't even a big hurt, but it's the death of 1,000 cuts, because nobody knows how to heal an injury once we've caused it. There's just a little hurt, and then there's another little hurt, and there's another little hurt, and pretty soon I'm a bloody mess, because we don't know how to heal it. Let's talk about what heals it. Because if you don't heal the hurt in the middle of, after a conflict, after a fight, after you've been hurtful, you ain't going nowhere, boy. All right? Because now the issue is not the finances or the in-laws or whatever. The issue is the hurt. You actually have not one problem, you have three problems. You have the original conflict, now you're fighting, and now you've hurt each other, and now all I care about is resolving that hurt. It is screaming at me. So if we're ever going to resolve any of this, much less the original problem, which we'll get to in a minute, we're going to have to deal with the third problem first, the hurt. Now let me ask y'all, what do you think you need when you're hurt? What do you need from someone when you're hurt? Will y'all answer that out loud? Comfort. What else? Acknowledgement, compassion. Good. Okay, the shorthand word I'm going to use for it is understanding or hearing, or that you get it. What really heals an injury is not apologies, not will you forgive me. It's actually trying on what it felt like to you for me to hurt you and talking to you about it to the point where you go, yeah, you get it. Remember, the feeling of being gotten is so close to the feeling of being loved that they're almost indistinguishable. Welcome back, all right? The only thing that ever makes hurts get better is not apologies and not flowers. It's when somebody gets it and sees and cares that they hurt me. It's the only cure. I get it. Hearing how we hurt them and talking to them about it is how we heal injuries. Sounds crazy, I know, but bear with me. You actually do this all the time. It's not complicated. Think about it. You're driving down the road and some guy cuts you off and he almost kills you both. And you go, oh my gosh, what an idiot. But then you see him look in his rearview mirror and kind of go like that. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, he knows he's an idiot. And you're like, everything's good now. You know, we're friends. All he did was this. What did he say? I acknowledge that I almost killed us both. And that's all we need. So we're not being gooby and psychological here. We do this all the time. So what we need is a rear view mirror wave in your marriage. Okay, that was gooby and psychological, but okay. In other words, to communicate to our spouse that at some level we understand, we get it, or at least we're willing to try to see that the way that they are hurting is valid. That's where we get the psychobabble word validation, all right? I see this makes sense. Of course you would hurt like that. That makes sense to me, all right? Humans are obsessed with this. Humans are obsessed with being understood and gotten and heard. Let me prove it to you. Think of what we say in a fight. We say, no, that's not what I meant. You don't get me. No, that you're putting words in my mouth. Oh my gosh, I give up. What do we say in a fight? We're protesting and arguing to try to say, that's not what I meant this. And we're yelling at you to make you get it. That's how desperate we are to be gotten. And the only way to heal hurt is for that gottenness to actually happen. Then I'm going to talk to you about how we're going to do that. After we've timed out, after we've bird's-eyed, we got to give these two hurting people what they're obviously longing for. But if beating it out of each other doesn't work, what are we going to do? Because that's what most fights are, is beating it out of each other. Which one of us is going to be understood and gotten, right? Well, in order to address this, we're going to apply some of my deepest, most sophisticated psychological interventions. We are going to take turns. I'm going to treat you like the 6-year-olds you are, okay? So I'll tell you a story. I don't know what motivated me to do this, but I think about death. I think death is kind of a holy thing to reflect on, kind of like Moses, teach us to number our days that we might present to thee a heart of wisdom. And so I was working on my funeral. I was up in my man cave. Norma was downstairs watching football. And I'm working on, I'm picking the songs. I wrote a piece that I want read, that I wrote. Believe it, you know me by now. I wanted to speak at my own funeral. Okay, so I write this piece. I'm picking hymns. I picked who I want to speak, who I wanted to preach my funeral. And this is really a very moving experience. I'm really excited. And I go running downstairs again to tell Norma, I want to talk to you about this. I've written my funeral. Now, she's watching the Cowboys, all right? And I'm like, oh, wait, this is a bad time. I shouldn't. Well, I'll do it later. She goes, no, it's fine. Tell me. And so I go, okay. So I have my iPad, and I'm going over it. I'm like, so the first hymn I want to sing, and as I'm talking to her, I'm noticing her going like this. She's watching Dak, all right? I'm like, are you sure this is a good time? And she's like, yeah. And so I keep going. It's like, and who I want to speak, and she keeps watching the football game. And so I finally said, I tell you what, I think I need a timeout, and I'm going to stop, and we'll talk about this later. I was so hurt and so ticked. Like, really? This is my funeral. And you're watching a football game? So, after the game, I said, Les, can we kind of have a do-over of what happened earlier? And she said, yeah. I said, I'm actually really hurt. Can we work on that? And she said, yeah. She said, you go first. Take turns, right? So I said, I've been working on my funeral. It felt very moving to me. You actually told me, I gave you the chance. We can do this some other time. And you told me, Norma's not good on boundaries sometimes. She's not good at really saying what she needs. You told me this was a good time, and it was not. And it felt like, given the opportunity to hear about my funeral or to watch the ball game, you wanted to watch the ball game, that hurt me. And she got it. She said, I totally get that. I should have, A, told you it was a bad time, but B, it must have felt to you like I didn't care at all, like I cared more about the Cowboys than I did your funeral. And I'm like, yes, I felt terrible. She goes, I really care about that. I said, thank you. All right, that's how you know that you've succeeded, when the person goes, yeah, I'd been gotten. Okay? So, hokey doodle. I feel all better. We can stand for the benediction, right? Wrong. Because she hasn't been heard. We're taking turns, remember? After I've been heard, I can say, hey, you want a turn? Or she can go, can I have a turn? Because if she doesn't get a turn, I'm still winning, she's still losing. I'm still understood, she's still not. And you're still not equal. You're still dancing the dance. So we take turns. Good boys and girls take turns. You will get a turn. Don't fight for it. So after she's heard me, she gets a turn. And she said to me, she said, actually, I'd had the worst day, and I knew that the Cowboys were playing tonight. She loves Cowboys. And see how backwards we are? I'm writing my funeral, and she's watching football. And all I wanted to do was to turn my brain off, veg out, shut down, not engage, and just get lost in watching the ball game. And so it's kind of hard when you wanted to shift those gears all the way back and talk about your funeral. I just needed to shut down, and I bet I came across that way. And then she added this. And also, it was really kind of hard to me to talk to you about your death. I think part of me was kind of ambivalent about that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, of course you were. And she goes, yeah. I got her. We took turns. It is the only way out of this mess. All right? Now, if you want, you can have another turn. I go, cool, can I have another turn? You got to take turns. Quit fighting. All right? Now, this will take practice. And you'll do it poorly at first. But at some point, you learn to be idiots. You can learn to do it right. Okay? Trial and error. So, bottom line, the 3 H's. Healing, heals, hearing, heals, hurt. Better than apologies. All right, final step. Hopefully you've done your homework and you've gone time out and you've birds-eyed and you're listening, you've understood, and the wildfire's diminished. That's the good news. Bad news is you still hadn't solved the problem, the one that started all this in the first place, all right? So now some fights don't have a real problem. Some fights are just you're a bonehead. You know, you just come in the door from work and you go, God, what happened here? This place like a bomb went off. Like, you know, men with ski masks, like we're looking for drugs or something. What did you do all day? You know, then that you're just being an idiot there, so there's no problem to solve. All right, how do we solve a problem? Remember I said that every marriage fight is hopeless because by definition they are win-loses? Well, buckaroos and buckarettes, no fight's ever going to get better or conflict's going to get better until we create a win-win. Mutuality. In other words, both got to matter in the solution. This is the question of what kind of marriage do we want? Do we want a who's going to matter marriage? Or do we want a we're both going to matter marriage? And man, we're going to have to be smart to make that happen, but we're smart. Okay? Healthy relationships, the goal is mutuality, not winning. Okay? That means whether you like it or despise it or disagree with it or hate it, somehow you've both got to matter in the solution. All right? And that's not always going to be the way you want. But the day you said I do, one of the questions you were saying I do too was, do you agree for your needs to not be the only thing that makes decisions in your marriage? And you said, I do. All right? The good news is so does your spouse. All right? But seriously, win-win is not like a solution. It's not like John's telling you to go compromise. All right? Win-win is more like a covenant. Win-win is more like a heart commitment of mutuality. It's like the Marines, no man left behind. It's a commitment I want you to make to one another that says, look, I don't want to live anymore in a way where each of us are trying to win over the other one because we're afraid if we don't fight for what we want, we're going to get left out in the cold. I commit to you that somehow, given the problems we have, we will figure them out together. All right? Win-win means that I can now trust that I don't need to make you let me matter. We covenant with each other that we'll have each other's back. This is the only hope for feeling safe in a marriage. And by safe, I mean this. A major reason that we all fight is because we're scared. In other words, I'm scared if I don't fight you, you're going to take what you want, forget me, and under the bus I go. So I'm going to fight you to take and win before you can fight and take and win and drop me. We're afraid. Get it? That's what's going on behind a lot of your fights. Instead, win-win is a covenant a couple makes that says, I will not just take my way and leave you out in the cold. You don't need to fight me in order to matter. I promise. We will figure it out. You think I'm too hard on the kids? I think you're too easy. I'm not going to pull the leadership submission, tie goes to the husband. We're going to do it my way. If I'm really a good leader, by the way, I just put today a new podcast is dropping that I just did on leadership and submission. My podcast guy told me today. I'm going to say if I'm really a good leader, my leadership looks like this. You and I are going to work this out until we're both uncomfortable, until we both have to grow. That's what a good leader says. So you think I'm too easy on the kids? I think you're too soft. Let's get a marriage book. Let's get a parenting book. Let's talk to somebody who can help us think this through. Let's both get uncomfortable. You think we spend too much money? I think we save too much. Let's both get uncomfortable. Let's flex. Let's work. You want to talk about our issue tonight? I'm tired. Okay. I commit that I will bring it up tomorrow night if you let me go to sleep. And I promise we'll talk about it. And you win then, I win now, in that I get to rest. We're both going to matter, all right? You want to remodel, I don't. Well, let's get creative. How do we both matter? How about we do a cool new kitchen, see how my bonus turns out at the end of the year, and we can read. But you hear the tone? The tone is not one of, what do you think? We can't afford that. You can't do that. That's win-lose. You got to say, that's not what I want. How do we both matter here? And you can ask me questions. There's very interesting things that people do. Like, what if one of you wants 3 kids and the other wants 4? What do you Solomon, one of the kids, No, there are really cool ways I've seen couples deal with that. But the orientation is that I'm amazed at how creative couples get once they stop fighting. Once they stop trying to win, they get super creative. This actually solves most of the problems that come up in the legendary how do you make sense of leadership and submission dynamic. Most problem areas of leadership and submission only take place in marriages that are oriented toward a win-lose. If you have a win-win oriented marriage, the questions of leadership and submission just melt away. They almost become non-issues. It's really cool. So, is finding a win-win easy? No, you're going to have to work at it. Nobody said any of this is going to be easy. But at least now what you're doing is trying to solve a problem together, not fighting. And that's what marriage is two people solving problems together, not fighting. There are always solutions if you quit trying to win, okay? So, bottom line, if you're alive, you're going to have conflict. And I want you solving that conflict together as friends, not win-lose enemies, okay? Neither one of you wants to fight. Fighting's not fun. And neither one of you wants to be mean. And that's kind of where I want to end again this morning, similar to last night, and that is Romans 7. I want you to have that same Romans 7 orientation in your fights and your conflicts as you do in your marriage. I want you to be living in a place that says, I don't want to hurt you, but I know I do. I do the very thing you hate. Let's be broken together and take care of everybody. So I want you to write these things down, review them, put them in your bookshelf. When Norm and I were doing some marriage therapy, we'd start to get into a tiff, and I'd go pull out my notes and go like, okay, don't say that. All right, good. All right. Don't trust your memory. You're going to be loaded up with adrenaline and reacting. I want your frontal lobe on this, all right? And in application to all this, we need our body of Christ, and we need people outside of our system to do it. All right, let's do questions. Good. And there's a question somebody asked me before we got started this morning, and I want to speak her question, and I want to answer it because I thought it was very interesting, and it relates so much to what we were just talking about. Otherwise, get your questions going in your head, and I'll be checking my phone too. The question was this. So we're talking about the fourth eye last night, right? And we're talking about being able to contain that reactive part of me. It's sort of like what we talked about in this talk right here of taking a time out and setting limits on my reactivity. So her question was, what do you do when that part of you can't control? What do you do when those emotions just blow out of you and it's like they catch you off guard and you keep reactively reacting, and it's not like you can just stop and go, well, what was it in my childhood that made me feel like this? And, how do you actually engage that out of control sort of part of us that we all have? That's a great question. There's two things. This applies to any out of control behavior, by the way. Be it out of control eating or porn or out of control rage or meanness or any out of control behavior needs two things. One of them is we do need some context of insight. What's driving all of this stuff in me? In other words, it's like the question I asked myself about my reaction to Norma in her book. Why did I react that way? I needed to answer that question. And if you've never asked those questions before, you're going to need other people to help you learn. And that will be a gradual process of discovery. Like, why does that trigger me so much? You need to learn that because otherwise you're sort of, if you only address the behavior and you don't take a look at what's going on in your heart, you're painting over a rusty barbecue, if you get my drift. All right? The rust is still just going to eat through. So we got to clean out the inside of the barbecue too. Jesus called it whited sepulchers. All right, but if all you do is go insightful, like what's going on in me internally in my little child parts that's making me act this way, if that's all you do, you'll just know the very nurtured and insightful rageaholic. So the second thing that out-of-control behaviors need is literal, experiential limits and consequences in reality. Because think about it. The part of you that's acting crazy, that's acting reactive, that's acting like a jerk is that 6-year-old, right? And telling a 6-year-old, gee, it's really bad if you yell at your wife. You ought to be nice to her. That's like telling a 10-year-old, go do your homework, because just think of all the people you'll help one day as a neurosurgeon. He's like, what? You got to take his Xbox. Kids need immediate experiential consequences. What I call it in the book is consequences and events and discipline are children's learned language. Children don't learn very much from all of our words, blah, 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 blah. Sounds like Charlie Brown's teacher. What children learn from in discipline is not a lot of words, but events that happen. I go to timeout. I lose my dessert. I need an event. So we got to create an event, even in adults. All right, I actually did this to myself once. We went through a season several years back. I don't know what was going on with me, but I was barking at Norma and being really mean. Remember I told you when I started talking last night that you're going to think I'm a good husband because I'm a marriage expert, but I'm not. Are you learning that now? Like, I do boneheaded stuff all the time. So I'd go through this season where we would have a little tiff, and then I'd go watch a movie in the man cave or something, and I'd come down and I'd be mad, still mad. And so Norma's like in her jammies, like reading a book in the bed, and I'd be walking in the room going like, and another thing, and she's like, ah, like this. And so the next morning she goes, that felt terrible. Like, I didn't sleep. The scary man comes in yelling at me at 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, you're right. That's terrible. I shouldn't do that. And then a week later, I did it again. And she said, you did it again. I said, I know. But I am a psychologist, and I know how people work, and I was repentant. And I said, so here's the deal. I know this trick. I said, here's the deal. If I do this to you again, I lose the man cave for a week. I'm going to be down here with you, watching Grey's Anatomy. If that don't teach you, nothing will. So I did it again, the third week in a row. And she goes, man cave? I lost man cave for a week. I haven't screamed at her since. Now, what a woman will say to that is, oh, so you loved your man cave enough to not yell at her, but not your wife. And that's not true. I'm having to speak the love language, the learned language of my little kid parts. Little kid parts don't care about lofty concepts like doing the right thing. They care about that experiential consequence. If you care about stopping an reactive behavior, get some insight, talk to your body of Christ people, but set limits on it in practical life. I had a guy who was struggling with porn in my office, and we were doing insight as to what's going on with him in porn, but also he set up a deal where, this was his idea because I told him this was your only way out, that it would cost him $100 anytime he used. And he would come into my office and give me $100 that I would use for people who couldn't afford therapy. And every now and then he'd walk in the office and he'd just like slap $100 down, and it's like, okay, well, let's keep working. But there was this event that it was costing him practically. That was key to helping him get unstuck, right? So, how to deal with an out-of-control behavior. Question?
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Somebody bring the mic.
Hello.
Hello.
So, regardless of the source, this is a repentant and unrepentant, both answers.
Yeah.
When I have a trust issue and I don't trust any of the people in this room, if hypothetically that were an issue with me, and I would adopt a defensive posture no matter what, and my response might be something like, well, that's never going to happen again, regardless of the source of whatever that was.
Yeah.
That would paint my warped brain into how I would respond to various trauma, like you've mentioned.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. This probably never happens.
In other words, a dynamic where I realize that that trusting part of me has really been kind of shut down, is sort of cynical, it's given up, I'm pulling away, and yet I'm talking about how important it is in our growth that we be in relationship, that we be connected, but how do I do that if that trust piece is broken? Is that kind of what you're asking?
It could be betrayal from anybody.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I'm living in this posture of anticipating betrayal and the vulnerability of that injury. And that's kind of defining my relationships now. Is that what you're asking?
Sure.
All right. Good, that's a good question. Okay. Let's start with repentance. Because an unrepentant person isn't going to ask that question. An unrepentant person is going to be cynical and bitter for the rest of their lives. I don't trust people. I don't want to trust people. You're an idiot. Tell me to do it. Forget it. Go away. And the only hope for an unrepentant person in that context is that whether you're repentant or unrepentant, if you live in a position where your trust has been wounded and therefore you're not connecting to other people, I can't sit here and go, oh, that's wrong. Psychologically, that's bad. What I can say is it will produce fruit. In other words, to be a psychologist, you really don't need to be very smart. If you have a glitch in how you're relating, it's going to bear fruit somewhere. People ask me, it's like, do we need to get our kids in therapy since the divorce? I'm like, well, are you seeing any symptoms? They're like, no. I'm like, well, then you don't need to get them in therapy. Asking does a child need therapy is like asking, how do you know when shrimp are cooked? They turn pink. You know, they change color for you. And if I have a glitch in the way I'm trusting or connecting to other people, it's going to produce fruit. I'm going to get depressed. I'm going to become super angry. I'm going to develop an addiction. I'm going to have some fruit. And for a repentant person, that's their only hope, is for them to have fruit enough to make them so miserable they're actually willing to look at it. Now, once they're willing to look at it and are sort of more repentant of, what is the deal with me and trust? I don't trust anybody, and I shut myself off, and I'm kind of in a double bind now because Cox is telling me to engage other people to grow, but there's no way I'm going to do that. I think that that's one of the cool things that therapy offers. In other words, what therapy is, it's like a super safe, almost artificially safe context in which somebody can say, look, you know, the run-of-the-mill Joe here is a bit ham-handed when it comes to relationships. I need a surgeon. I need somebody who really can go in there and really understand the dynamics of what it means for me to trust or not trust, where I can actually have more of a guarantee that you're safer. And a lot of clients I work with, it's like they will be very wounded in their ability to trust, and they either tell me that or I pick up on it real quick. And so that's the orientation of the therapy. How do I relate to them in a way to where we don't go any faster than they want to, that they make the call, that they have a lot of power here to where they are always feeling safe, and gradually they learn to sort of peek out of that hood that they're hiding under and say, maybe it is possible for that one person to be safe. And they start having a new category for that software that we talked about of being able to let you in. And I start trying that out. And I actually have an experience with John that, well, I've told John these things and I've not been hurt there. So that goes against my whole old grid of how trust doesn't work. You can't trust anybody. But I'm getting a category for where trust is possible, and we start to heal that part by an experience. And that's one of the coolest things I enjoy about therapy, is because most of us feel kind of stuck. In other words, I'm super filled with shame, and it runs my life. And the only way to heal that is to be in relationship. But to tell somebody in a relationship about having this much shame is really shameful. So there's no way I'm going to do it. So I'm really stuck. You feel how people get in a real double bind. And that's one of the cool things that therapy does. It sort of can break that double bind and say, okay, well then let's put you in an ultra-safe, sterile room in a sense to where I am super trained to not hurt you. And if I do, I'm super trained to help repair that. So let's kind of take you out into this other little context and help heal you there, and then we can put you back, and it breaks that double bind. So in the context of the body of Christ kind of growth, when we do have areas that are really wounded, it's helpful to have somebody who really knows kind of how to do that surgery. And once you do that, and once you start opening up the possibilities of that trust muscle starts to heal, and then it kind of can get generalized. Let me do a somebody asked, how do you address hurt outside of an immediate conflict in regards to more of a history, a long-term sense of lots of injury that's kind of been defining to me, and how do we integrate that with love covers a multitude of sins, of the dynamic of forgiveness. How do I make sense of how much I'm hurting in the context of how I know I need to forgive, I know I need to love? How do I move forward and heal? Great question. A couple of thoughts on it. One of the things that we forget when we talk about forgiveness is that any issue to forgive that we need to address forgiveness with a repentant person especially, involves two issues, not one. There is a issue to be forgiven. In other words, do I hold this over you? Am I better than you? How dare you have done this to me? Or do I forgive? In essence, going, I'm not going to live in judgment against you. That's one issue. The other issue, though, that we often forget when we're talking about forgiveness dynamics is there is an injury. And humans really can get injured. And a lot of times when a couple is trying to deal with, I had a couple of questions here about like deep betrayal kind of injuries in a marriage. So I'll try to touch on those two for those of you who texted that. Couples will say, okay, there's an issue of forgiveness, but the betrayed spouse needs to keep talking about it. And the person who did the hurtful choices is going, well, why do we have to keep talking about this? I thought you forgave me. And I'm like, well, actually, they did forgive you, but the injury isn't healed yet. In other words, if you back over my foot with your car, I mean, I can probably forgive you. I'm a bad driver, too. But I'm going to be limping now, and I'm going to need surgery, and you're going to have to drive me to PT, and you're going to be going, I don't understand why I have to keep driving you to PT. I thought you forgave me. You get the moron factor there? Okay? In other words, a lot of people who think they're struggling with unforgiveness, oh, I can't forgive this person, actually aren't. They're struggling with the healing process. All right, now, to answer the question about healing, you need to do two layers of healing. There's a dynamic of healing in contemporary life, and also some curiosity about healing in you internally. Contemporary life. The best healing that there is like what I was talking about addressing the hurt. When there's been a big betrayal in a relationship, what I so often hear from the person who makes the hurtful choices is, oh my gosh, can't we move on? Can't we let go of this? You know, even Paul says, forgetting what lies behind, now move on, pressing forward. You know, and imagine how that feels to the wounded spouse. How much they matter. One of the reasons that forgiveness is so difficult is because letting go of holding someone accountable for how they've hurt me feels so close to almost saying that the way you hurt me doesn't matter, that it almost feels like I'm going to fall off the ledge, like this injury doesn't even matter. So if they're ever going to get past it, they need a lot of mattering given to them. And that might mean a good season of time where the hurtful person, since they're repentant, I assume, if they're unrepentant, it's a different show, is saying, you can talk about this all you need to. I'm grateful you're even engaging me after the way I hurt you. In other words, what you need if you've been hurt is the freedom with someone who really is willing to hear you and get it and try that on. And you might need that from other people outside. But that process is what heals us in that understanding. And we rebuild trust by having an experience over time of accountability where this person is not hurting us. And usually those people are saying, yes, do whatever you need to help you feel safe with me. Again, that sounds like I'm getting it. I'm repentant. You matter. The other issue is how I metabolize histories of hurt. Sometimes a hurt in contemporary life, like a marriage, triggers a deeper hurt that I've had for a long time that's never gotten resolved, and we might need to do some work there. So there's sometimes two layers to it if you get really stuck. So anyway, now, question over here.
Yes, my question is, so me and my wife will often have quicker tongues than brains, and so...
That's well said. I think she believes you just did.
Yeah, definitely. So my question is, we'll often...
We saw it out. Hey, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You're fine. We'll often be in the middle of an argument and we'll realize we're being dumb.
Yeah.
But how do you go from hitting below the belt to basically getting up on a high horse without seeming like, you know, you're being pretentious and everything?
Wait. I missed the high horse. I thought you were in a good role there. You were about to set a timeout.
So, well, yeah. So even if we try and switch up, like change the pace like of a timeout, it seems like you're going from hitting below the belt to getting on a high horse. Like, how do you
What's
make
the high
that?
horse?
like being holier than thou, like, oh, I have realized we're in the middle of an argument and I'm going to fix it. And I feel like that's a problem we hit a lot when we're in an argument. So like, how do you go from being in the middle of a heated argument and switching it without seeming like you're trying to be better than them? I don't know how to word that correctly, but.
All right, my first answer to your question is I don't care. In the sense, if you're going to take a time out, do it poorly. I don't care. Just take a time out. Do it lousy. Just take a time out. All right? But if you have this awareness, which I love that you're doing, this is so cool. Something in you is going, in my heart of hearts, if I really listen, there's a part of me that feels like if I'm going to do, the John Cox plan and make a time out and stop this from escalating, I am really a super good guy and I can be on a high horse. I'm better than her. Ick. Okay, wow. Okay. Duly noted. I love that repentance. That ownership, that's what confession is. Notice a lot of what we've talked about is kind of like confession. I mean, the way we heal and grow begins with confession of this is the truth about me. So if you can go there, then once y'all reunite from timeout, that'd be a great thing to be repentant about. Hey, babe, like before we started rehashing where we were going in a more sane way, I think I have some weird problem of feeling holier than thou when I make a timeout. Like, what's up with that? Because I'm as big of a goob as you. We're both goobs. I want you to hold me accountable. If you ever hear that little tone in me, that's sort of like, oh, I'm better than you, just kind of give me a little sign to remind me that I'm being an idiot. So would you help me with that, honey? Okay? That's repentance about seeing that dynamic. But if you're taking a time out, you've got a lot of wiggle room to screw it up. I just like that you're taking a time out.
I have a question.
Where are you?
So this question has to do,
Rusty?
unless it's stupid, and then my name is Brenda.
Brenda, okay. I met her at Rusty earlier.
It's me. I'm Rusty.
Okay.
Again, unless it's
Oh, I get it. So I was right. That is your name.
That is my name.
I try to learn y'all's names, but you got me.
But now
Anyway,
you
go
just
ahead,
told
Brenda.
the whole place what my name is. So if this is stupid, I'm really going to look stupid.
Come on.
So I have noticed an affectation that you do, and I apologize if it, like you check your pulse, and I apologize if you're really checking your pulse. But it's always when something positive gets said by you, like you're doing the right thing. And so I wonder, is that a frontal lobe thing, like you're trying to show your partner, I'm trying to do a right thing? Or is that a warning, but you immediately go to a check your pulse kind of?
That's a cool question. It's actually,
Oh no, you really are checking your pulse, aren't
all right, I want to answer on a couple levels. The answer directly is, it's my little visual sign of I need to check in on what's going on with me. Am I angry? Am I afraid? Are you feeling fear of shame right now? What's going on with me? Like, I need to take my pulse. It's just, I kind of do it, it's like an affectation, a mannerism, a sign, a picture, a word picture, okay? But I get teased about it by people who are John Cox fans. Y'all know RUF, right? So I've done a ton of stuff for RUF. And so I was doing a thing for RUF a couple of years ago, and I was sitting up on the stage like I do, and these two RUF guys come up and go, I won. And I'm like, what do you mean you won? And it's like, we kind of have a John Cox drinking game, quote unquote. It's like, how many times is he going to do this? And I said 8, and he said more, and he won. So, yeah. So it's kind of a joke. It's like what I do, it's like, I'm going to listen to me going on inside. Like, dude over here is going, do I feel high horse about that? All right, so that's all it is. It's sort of my little nonverbal signal of reflection on who I am, where I am. And I don't mean it to just be positive. I'm also going, why am I being such a jerk right now? It's any sort of self-reflection. I don't know why I started doing it, but.
No, but to me, it almost, I think, could help in an argument or something to your partner where if you, to your spouse, if something is like, I'm starting to feel attacked, if you do an affectation to say, whoa, because at that point I might, like my tongue might be quicker than my brain. And so an affectation may be.
I sometimes need little quickies like that. Like one of mine is I will just say, I'm working. In other words, Norm and I are about to get in a fight, and she'll say something, I'm going to go, whoa, wait, I'm working. And that's sometimes the only thing I can get out of my mouth to not say something ugly. I'm working in my brain. Yeah, my brain's working. And it's like, okay, just give me a little space to time out this. Anything you can come up with, anything to sort of give a little sign that's like, let's just stop doing the bad, even if we don't know what to do good yet. I tell you, this is just so underused. It's so dumb and simple. But if we just time out, it gives us a chance to grow up to adults again. And adults can solve problems, all right?
Okay, right here.
All right.
Okay, it's on. I have a question. Say if you are the person who is very emotional, cries when they're happy, sad, angry, all the things, and the other person is normal, or an engineer, and what can the I do about that, and what can the we do about that?
What do you mean do about it?
Like, I don't know. In the sense of like, does that person need to just like learn how to regulate their emotions better? Or is it like the other person needs to learn that the other person is very emotional? Like, I don't know what I'm asking, but like, how do you like work around that kind of difference in...
All right, well, will you keep the mic and let me ask you a couple of questions?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm scared.
I'm very emotional too, and I like it. I was 9 years old when they landed on the moon. And when I got out of the car in the parking lot across the street and saw the first Saturn V I've ever seen in my life standing up, I just stood in that parking lot with tears on my face. Like, I remember being little and watching it. My parents let me stay up on the black and white TV. It was upside down, if y'all remember. I love that. The question is, to what degree am I, remember when we talked about intimacy, abiders, there's a difference between having your feelings and doing them? The question would be, to what degree can I have my feelings, and to what degree does that begin to leave a nasty footprint on the rest of my life and relationships? In other words, I can be moved seeing the Saturn V. And I would stand in the parking lot, and my wife was doing anything, and I'd go, I just need to stand here a second and just kind of let this soak in. That's cool. If I said, you know what, this is so powerful for me, I need to go home. We need to go back. In other words, are my emotions controlling me? Or I'm going to say, what you said just really hurt, and I really kind of feel a little off from it. I'm trying to make sense of that. I need to make sense of what's going on with me about that. That's me having a feeling, but I'm still taking ownership of it. The question about having feelings is not should you have them or not. The question is, when I have them, am I a good steward of them? In other words, cry all you want, be angry all you want, emote all you want, as long as you're taking responsibility for it, that says, I need to cry right now. And he can go, okay, cool, cry. But if you go, well, why aren't you crying? Okay, now you've stepped across the line, right? So having emotion is cool. Doing emotion but starts to step on other people's toes. And that's where we need to learn more about containment of an out-of-control emotion like me losing my man cave. Now, counterpart would be on his end going, okay, so the emotional world is like what John was talking about last night, that sense of feel. Not having that means that some part of me relation is a little colorblind. I want to learn more about that. Well, it sounds like he's got a good teacher living indoors right here, like teaching about that whole emotional connection thing. And I do it all the time at work. People who come to me and they'll say, I don't have any feelings, I don't know what I'm feeling. And it's funny, if you get them to talking about their hearts and their lives, you'll see it flicker across their face. And I'll often see a guy, I have a guy a while back who was like, used to be like a special forces guy. He was like Jack Bauer, you know, and they had like worked all of the emotion out of him. And yet he wanted to be able to connect with his feelings again. And I would talk to him and I would see this emotion flicker across his face. And I go, there, right there, right there. What did you feel? And he would start to actually catch it and feel it. You know, the emotions are there. God created us to have them. So we can find them if you have somebody engage you. So both of y'all kind of growing more towards center would be a cool kind of place of growth in y'all's marriage. Y'all can give to each other in that.
Thanks.
So my question is, with timeouts, is it normal to have to take more than one timeout for the same conflict?
Sure.
And what do you do when it feels like to one side or the other, it's changing from a timeout to a silent treatment?
Huh. Are they open to hearing that? Are they repentant?
Yeah, I think both sides would be
Y'all are starting to
repentant.
learn how I think now, right? First question is, are they willing to go, you know, I might be doing the silent treatment thing. Are they or are they not?
Well, I guess what I'm thinking is, what if the spouse who's, one spouse has been hurt to the point that it's hard for them to even acknowledge that they're being seen or being heard.
Ah, right.
And the other spouse may not even know exactly what they did to cause the hurt.
Yeah.
How do you break that impasse?
All right. Well, so in that context, we're not really sure exactly what parts of them are repentant and which are unrepentant. So I'm going to speak to both at once. I know we need a timeout. It seems smart that we're doing this. I'm going a little bird's eye here, okay? I am getting kind of a vibe that something in you is sort of shut down towards me. And I want to let you know if it's anything that is something I can give to you or a way in which I've hurt you I can address. I want to let you know I'm available to do that. Otherwise, I want to give you space to do what you need to do. And I need to manage my own feelings about not being able to fix this right now. Somebody asked me on text, if you're a fixer, how do you manage those feelings of needing to fix? Bravo, whoever you are, perfect. Most fixers have an emotional need to fix. Like they can't sit with the tension of something not being fixed, of their spouse having a problem or struggling without me fixing it. Exactly. You work on that and you're home free. Work on like, what is it in me that needs to make this all better? All right? So can I sit with the tension of you're in a struggling place and you can't even talk to me about it yet? Can I be sad about that? Because sadness is going to be something that actually makes me feel better and more whole and more powerful at the end. Keeps me out of a place of protest, trying to get them to shift because I need something. So I'm going to leave that at their door. Now, if they're repentant, they're going to go, thank you. Because something inside of them is going, how do I do this? How am I going to reapproach? Because maybe, it's like Dude's question here, maybe that part of me that trusts has gotten injured some. How do I move into that? And maybe they're thinking about that. If they're unrepentant and they're silent treatmenting you, you've called their bluff. Because silent treatment is basically, C.S. Lewis calls it blackmail. Silent treatment is basically, draws its power from shame. Silent treatment basically says, you are so bad that I can't even talk about it. So feel that, how silent the room is. That's because you're so bad. All right, and that's why we get driven like, well, what's wrong? Right? With a silent treatment person who's unrepentant, I want to go, hey, I get this vibe of this kind of loud silence that feels kind of angry in the room. Just BT dubs. If you ever want to talk about it or address it, I'm so open. But if you want to remain kind of distant and silent about it, gotcha, I think I'm cool, I'm going to watch the game. And you call them out on it. And now they have to like fish or cut bait. Right? So I don't play silent treatment. I want to basically say, we all know what you're doing, and the door's open if you want to knock on it. So, adios muchachos. And you take away all their power there. It's a great intervention with a unrepentant, hurtful person. But I would try the first one first, assuming that they're repentant and open. I would say, help me know how to best position my heart for you in your struggle. Now, if they're really stuck, they might need some work apart from y'all. I might want to talk to one of my Body of Christ friends and say, why is this? This has hooked me so much. And get curious. We've got to learn about that internal piece.
The examples you're giving are great and really beautiful to hear in terms of the conversations. The words you're using when, say, you do take a time out, you step back, you come back and talk to somebody. And for those that, you would say that this is a 180 or this would be a drastic change in the current patterns, could you speak to the reality of, and despite the reality, the commitment to the clunkiness of the journey of that change? The clunkiness of the journey of that change.
clunkiness of
Yeah.
the journey, I
Because
like
it could be
that.
frustrating that, man, I would love to communicate lovingly like that and thoughtfully. But then when you get in it, I would imagine, like you said with the software, if it's a very foreign thing, it's not going to be that for a while. So could you speak to that commitment and yet the reality of the clunkiness?
All right, again, I think that if you feel like it's a whole 180, if you feel like the shift to orienting like this feels that drastic, I would want other eyes involved with me. I would want people helping me. I mean, if the shift feels drastic, I want other people helping me walk through that process. You can't just freestyle that. So there's that. Number two, the way you're talking is grounded in repentance. In other words, sometimes I call this having a broken marriage. Wink, wink, in the good sense. In other words, we're both broken. So that means that you begin this journey together going, well, I get what Cox is saying. I don't think there's any way I can do it yet, but I want to at least get out. I remember when we were little kids, we'd watch football on Sunday afternoons and go out and play roughhouse in the yard. Okay, we weren't Fran Tarkington, but we just wanted to get out there and try. And you're saying, well, I want to at least try. And when you mess it up, go, I didn't do that well at all. Okay, duly noted. How do I learn? And I bring that to my body of Christ people, and I do some more growing. And if you're in that process together, then you're going, thank you that you're trying to learn. And yeah, that was kind of ham-handed, but let's grow. I don't think I handled it real well either. And y'all are both in a process of saying, let's be clunky. And there's room for that. Instead of us being the bad guy, we're both on that learning curve together. But a lot of this stuff is hard to do if you're trying to do it just in your marriage. You'll go 2 ticks and no dog real quick. Okay, we need other people. And even if it's just that one friend, somebody we can have walk us, help us see this.
All right. You talked a lot. Hello? All right. Dr. Cox, you talked a lot about, use the terms repentant and unrepentant. Just can we get a clearer definition of that? Are you talking about someone who, as a characteristic, is unrepentant, or are you talking more situational unrepentance?
Good question. I think we're all unrepentant about something, right? I find people have general styles in terms of, I said last night that even though we don't talk about those categories so much in the church as much as we used to or could, I've been blown away. I've been confronted with them clinically, because for us in the office, what we call it is humility, openness, brokenness. Can I admit that I need help? Only people who come to therapy are repentant people. In other words, they're people who are saying, hey, doc, I need help. All right? In other words, people whose lifestyle is one of saying, there's a problem and I want to get out of it. Help me be a part of that solution. That does tend to be kind of a personality style. And that's one of the reasons I put it as the 5th eye, because the first 4 eyes are really very developmental. They're very psychological. And there's a spiritual element. I don't know, I couldn't tell you why some people are repentant and some are unrepentant. That's almost a spiritual concept to me. It almost doesn't fit in psychology. I don't know what it is that makes our hearts soften besides the Holy Spirit. And somebody who is so recalcitrant and hardened and bowed up against humility, limits will affect them, but not necessarily. Some of them will just go to their grave shaking their fist at the world and God and each other. I don't know what it is that gives us that repentant part. So if you have it, thank God for it. I don't think a shrink can give it to you. I think it's a heart spiritual issue, really. But we can be involved with that process, with limit setting.
Hi. Is this working? It is.
Yes.
I also have a question about timeouts. I came into this thinking I was definitely the relational type. I fit that category, but the more I've listened to you, I'm wondering if maybe I am more of a fixer, because with timeouts, while I totally see the wisdom in it, it is a very scary idea to me because it is so uncomfortable for me to sit in what feels to me like a break in the relationship. Yeah. And it's almost like this compulsive need to like resolve, reconcile, come back together instantly, or I feel threatened and scared. And so I'm just wondering if you have any tips on like what to do with that.
That is so cool. Love that. Okay, in other words, like one of the reasons that we all act like knuckleheads is because we don't ask that question. In other words, what we might do is just kind of never do a timeout, or always be, chasing your husband going, no, baby, we need to work this out right now, and never ask the question, why am I doing this? Okay? I love the fact that you're asking it, because there is a why, and you're getting curious about it. In other words, what you're talking about is almost, if we put it in the 4 eyes, it's almost in the category of, can I keep you in? In other words, can I hold on to trusting that you love me, trusting that we're going to make it okay, trusting we'll work this out, even if it's not worked out right now. There's a little trust dynamic there. That's gold. I mean, bring that to some body of Christ people and get reflective on it, because there's somewhere, like little girl, you start going, okay, this isn't safe. We got to make sure everything's okay. And that is so healable if you start looking at that, and maybe there's a little grieving to do there. And we learn these things through relational experience, remember, and we can learn new things through new relational experience. So you have the opportunity to start learning, you know what? I actually can sit with the tension of there being kind of this quote unquote little breach and trust that it's going to be okay. And growth there would be so beautiful, not only for your marriage, but think how that would then use in that software in your relationship with God, in terms of connection with Him and trust in Him, that nothing can separate us from the love of God. In other words, we're talking about the same software there. So having that category is gold. Now, what I'd want to do with my body of Christ people is sort of explore a little bit like, where did I learn that? Why is that scary to me? I remember there was a dynamic in my family growing up where mom would be very oriented toward us, and then dad would come in and she would completely orient with him, and it's almost like we kind of lose her, And so I always had trouble with sort of like, can I trust if you love me and want me that you're not just going to leave and kind of go to somebody else? And that was kind of an injury for me. That's the kind of exploration to do there, because we learned that somewhere. I love your question, though. Thank you. Let's do one last one and wrap up. Is that what you were saying? Yeah.
Well, that actually was a good question.
Wasn't it,
I almost don't want to ruin it, even though you want it might not be that good. I want to go back to address the hurt.
Yeah.
Not every hurt comes from a malicious intent.
Yeah.
Could be friendly fire. Could be just a misunderstanding. If you're the injured party and you've gone to a place where, I don't really care whether that was intentional or unintentional or anything like that. I'm really in a spot right now where that's hurting. And this could be either party. It could be the taking care of business person, or it could be the abide person. How do you get out of your own way? To give some space to the person. I mean, you're still hurting profoundly, but you need to give some space to that person to help start the solving process. But, and I guess the kind of, one angle of the question is, does it really matter whether it was intentional or unintentional, whether it was a malicious or not? What can you speak to just that dynamic of starting that addressing process when the hurt is really not coming from a malicious?
I want to get super curious about what that hurt means to me. Okay, so Norma announced to me a couple of years ago, she said, Callie, who's our oldest, she said, guess what? Callie asked me, like, to go to Paris. She wants to go to Paris, me and her. Isn't that awesome? I'm like, yeah. Okay, so little me, 6-year-old me is like, you didn't want me to go to Paris with you? Just your mom? You don't want me? And so I'm like, no malicious hurt. I just feel left out. And it really hurt me. Like really excluded. Like my example, I have triangle problems. Where are you? Yeah. In other words, I thought you loved me and you love her, okay? Sort of the same dynamic. That's my injury. I want to get really curious about that. In other words, if I'm feeling like stuck in an injury, I want to know why that injury means that to me. I want to get curious about it. I want to learn it. And so I started going, oh, I feel excluded. My question is, do I matter? Do you want me? So I went to Norma and I said, can I ask you a question? I'm trying to answer little part questions. They're screaming inside. Did Kelly not want me to go to Paris? Did y'all want to just kind of buddy up and leave Dad at home and not take me? And she said, oh, no. Callie just kept talking about how all of her friends in Nashville keep going on these cool trips with their moms. And she said, you know how you and your dad always go on trips, flying airplanes or sailing boats or whatever like that? It's kind of like that. And I'm like, okay. I needed kind of the comfort to say, this isn't because you don't want me, all right? And I had to do that by kind of going inside and saying, you know, what is it that really this injury is about? What is it that I am needing here? And what is it that I'm afraid of? The curiosity is what we need to have so we can kind of maybe get some body of Christ people in there to help us with it. All right. I have so loved being with y'all. Different audiences and different people are different to work with, and I can feel it in me. And y'all are such a good group and a fun group, and I've so enjoyed being with you. Marriage is probably the hardest thing you'll ever do. It probably took me the longest to learn to be a good marriage therapist of anything, because it's so difficult. And if you do it halfway good, then you're ahead of the curve. You're ahead of most people. The fact that you're here at all says that you care. And I want you to say that to the person you ride home with. I care about this. I want to learn this. Right? So I want you to use these things I've told you, and I want you to make mistakes with these things I've told you. What was the word you used? Clunky. Do it clunky. Repair the clunky with these things, but mostly do marriage as the daredevil encounter that is. Most people in our culture don't have the guts to do it. Right? So, go break some eggs. Let me close this in prayer. Father, I ask your blessing on these people as an intercessor for them temporarily in a place of ministry for them here in this weekend, this season. I want to ask on their behalf that you reach your hand, your heart into these marriages, that you reach into the places of us that are broken, the places in each of us that are unrepentant, the places in us that are just so scared, the places in us that are angry, the places in us that want to pull away, the places in us that aren't like you at all. And I pray that you would enter their lives, their marriages in this church in a way that's refreshing and life-giving and powerful. I pray that upon them. We can only pray for any of this hope, any of this redemption, because we have a Redeemer, the Lion of Judah, the Lamb who was slain, the bright and morning star. And it is in his name that we pray all these things. Amen. Thank you all.